Okay, today we have a fun podcast lined up because I have my friend Katie Fenske here to talk about all things like being a mom while running a business from home, while doing a podcast, juggling it all. And I always look at you as like the mom expert because that is what your
Oh,
business is around. So thanks for being here.
oh my gosh. Am I the expert? I don't know. I like to say that I am learning from my mistakes and sharing that with people.
Well, I think that's why I've always been drawn to you is because you're just like real. You put the real stuff out there. Like I see your stuff every day on my feed. It's always like the first thing to pop up. And every time I see it, I'm like, I just laugh because I'm like, oh yeah, I know that happened with my son. Cause
Yep,
you don't
yep.
try to hide like the messy stuff. You're just like, nope, this is what it's like with boys.
Right, right. This is my crazy life. That's it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's for me, that's comforting because I think there's too many people on social media that only show like the perfect outfits and the perfect house and everything else. And I'm just like, man, I'm a
Right.
hot mess. You kind of
Well,
need
and
to see
that's what
the
makes
realness.
motherhood so hard right now because I went in and it just seemed like I was doing everything wrong. And then not knowing that everyone else is doing everything wrong, I was like, oh my God, what's
Yeah.
wrong with me? So I think with social
Yeah.
media right now, it's really hard not to like have realistic expectations of motherhood.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like it's changing though. I feel like, especially on TikTok,
Yeah.
I feel like the people that are the most real and raw are doing really well. And I'm like, okay, this is a good
Hmm.
trend. I hope it
Yes.
continues.
Because it
'Cause
went from like the beautiful aesthetic, like everything matchy to like,
yeah.
I can't keep up with that. Like I see a lot of really big creators who are finally like, I'm having a mental breakdown. I need to take a break from this. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, because you look like you have it all together and you're doing
Yes.
well and you have the followers. And it's like, oh, like this is hard for you too.
Yeah. I just saw a really big one. Gosh, I'm trying to remember her name. She was more of like a comedian type TikToker, but she had just become a mom. El
Oh,
Elise, I think is her name.
okay.
And she had like millions of followers and she walked away from it all.
Wow.
And she was like, I'm just going to spend time with my family and like take a break. And I was like, okay, if someone like that is
Yeah.
struggling with the whole social media
Yes.
thing, then we should all just like say this is
Be okay with
hard.
that.
It's
Yeah.
not always easy. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard emotionally too, because people can be not so nice all the time. I mean, I feel like
Mhm.
for the most part, it's fine, but there are some trolls out there. And I'm sure you've seen that like with the motherhood stuff, because I feel like some people can be a little
Right.
judgy. And it's
Or like
usually
with
someone that
potty
doesn't have
training, it's
kids.
like if they have a different way of doing it, it's like, no, that's wrong. And you're just like, well, excuse me, I'm trying to help people. Like this
Yeah.
worked for me. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
see, and I don't like that. I'm just like, I want all the ideas that I can get because
Right.
I don't know it all. I
Right.
I learn every day. I try.
Yep.
Yeah. So okay, the biggest thing that people have been asking me for is how am I doing the podcast, the business with kids at home, all from my house, and you're in the same boat. And
Yep.
before we started recording, we were literally talking about how our kids are like right outside the door. And it's
It's
like,
day one of summer break right now. And I'm like, sure, watch TV at 9 a.m. Like this isn't gonna be all summer, but it's survival, like
yeah.
survival mode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so like it seems like the house is quiet right now because we have good mics, but they're right, like they're gonna start probably banging on the
Mhm.
door at some
Yeah.
point. Like it
There's only
is
so many snacks I can leave for them before they go through that and then come ask for another one.
right, exactly. Yeah. Before I came in here, Amelia, my 4-year-old, is like, Mom, no, don't do a podcast today. And I'm like, my
Oh,
oldest was like, Amelia, mom used to be gone all
yeah.
day
Oh,
long
she
at work.
remembers that.
She remembers it, and she's like,
Yes.
"You can sit still for, like, 45 minutes while she records a podcast and watch a movie, and then you get to spend the rest of the day with her. You can
The
go
day with her.
swimming, you can do whatever."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man," like, because that was really why I got into all this.
Mhm.
It broke my heart sending her to childcare all summer long
Oh my
or
God.
putting her in front
Yes.
of the TV while, my husband was sleeping because he was working the night shift.
Mhm.
And so it's like that kind of reminded me, like it kind of gives me that motivation. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, this
Yeah.
I need to do this because I don't ever want to go back to
Oh,
that
same.
schedule.
Oh my God. Same. Because when I was in teaching, I was like, I need to get out. Like for 2 years, I'm like, I have more than 2 years, more than 2 years. I had to get out. From the minute I had my son, it was like, I cannot be doing this full time. And I look at all like the working out of the home parents. Summer break is here. And I'm like, okay, we scheduled swimming lessons. We've got our bucket list. We're going to the beach. I'm like, I get to do that with them because of this.
Yes.
If I like had to stick you in a day camp from 9 to 5 every single day, I'm like, what? That's great that parents have that option. But I'm like, I couldn't take them to all these places that we have on our bucket list. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate for
Right. And
this.
I think it is like, I don't know, my whole mindset on it has changed so much because in the corporate world, it's like everyone's just like, well, yeah, duh, like that's just the way it is. And I never prescribed to that mentality. I'm like, but why? Like, this doesn't feel right for me
Hmm.
to, you know, send my kids around. And then I felt like I was always rushing. I was always rushing. I could never fully give like 100% to my job or to being a mom because I was always like trying to juggle it all. And I think
Hmm.
that's something that people are starting to talk about in our society, but it was very taboo in the corporate world, you know? It was like the moms I worked with got it. Everyone else didn't. And it was like we were, looked down upon because we had kids and we couldn't work late or work
Have to
early
go home.
because we have to drop them off at, summer camp. And so for any moms out there that's going through that right now, just know like
Get
I
it.
get it. And I am sending you so much love because I think it's the hardest
Yes.
thing that moms go through. I
Right.
really do.
Well, they say either you're failing at work and like holding it together at home, or you're failing at home if you're like succeeding at work. Like you just can't find a balance. It's
Yeah.
just
And it's not
hard.
forever. It's just like those
Right.
years when they're really young. It's
Hmm.
just so hard, and there's really not a lot of
Right.
support unless you have your own business. And then,
Yeah.
like, you can do all these things and you don't have to constantly juggle the childcare. And yeah, we have to juggle it while we record,
Yeah. Right.
but I would much rather that than like
I'd
all
rather do
summer
that.
long.
Yes. And like, I know some people are like, no, working out of the house is totally for me. I love that. My job is
Yes.
great. And that's great. But no one really talks about like women wanting to be home and that being an okay thing too. Like,
Right.
women went into the workforce and, women's rights. That's great. But then you're like, but what about the moms that want to stay home? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Cause
there's
it's almost
nothing wrong with
impossible
that.
now
Mm.
on one
You have to
income.
have two income. Well, I live in Southern California. Like you have to have two incomes to
That's got to be the most
afford
expensive place in the
anything.
world.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's so hard. Like there are
Mhm.
very few of my friends that are like stay-at-home moms.
Yeah.
It's just not possible anymore.
Right.
But
Well,
then you
here
have
in Florida too, it went from being super affordable to everyone moved here during COVID and the prices of it's just like so expensive now,
skyrocketed.
probably not as bad as California, but similar. And yeah, it's like people
Yeah.
don't really have a choice, but I feel like that's where I do want to motivate some people into like, you do have a choice to like try something different
Hmm.
and just get started. And I think that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about because I think there's this perception. I know I had this perception that, well, I'll start my business and it's just going to take off from day one.
You're right.
And that doesn't happen. It just
I'm
doesn't
still waiting for
happen.
mine to like really take off. Like it's
Yeah.
going to, but I had to start it. Yep.
You just have to get started.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like if you have it's great to have that mentality and to have good goals and everything
Hmm.
else. But I
And
think a lot of people
it does
wait.
happen for some people.
It does, it
Hmm.
does. But I think it's like I hear a lot of people say like, "Well, I'm gonna wait until this date when I can quit my job and then I'll get
Hmm.
started." And I always try to tell people get started now while you have the job and while you have that steady income and just try to take a little bit of that money every month and put it towards your business
Hmm.
because it does, you have to like sort of build up that
Yeah.
momentum. And I
And that's what
think,
I did. I think I worked for 2 years. I was still teaching for 2 years before I like officially quit.
yeah,
And
I
that was
still remember
so
when you
scary. I
put the
think I was on a
letter.
call with you right after.
Yes.
And I was like, you
Yes.
guys, I just had a panic attack. I just sent in my like resignation. I literally almost had a panic attack. I was like, what did I just do?
Yep. Yeah.
So
Oh my
scary.
gosh. Yeah, that's so crazy. I remember that. And I was so excited for you. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, but like it's
But
gonna
and
be
that
forever.
was like, I wouldn't say it took off, my business took off, but I quit my job and I had done a couple like free potty training consultations before that, but I
Hmm.
quit my job and no joke, the next week I had like a TikTok video go viral and then people started booking. And that summer was super busy with consultations. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this could work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
When
think
you
I
make
almost need
that
to just tell the
decision.
universe, like, now I'm ready. I kind of like
Yep.
got things going. I got my website when I was working, I just kind of got my
Hmm.
Etsy shop going, started like practicing, but it wasn't until I like really made the decision
Yeah.
that it did start showing like, okay, this could work.
Well, I feel like that's the thing. It's like making the decision, like letting the universe know, like, okay, I am no matter what, I am doing this. And
Uh,
it's like that first step, and then the
so
next step
scary.
appears, and then the next
Hmm.
step appears.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and you've come so far. And like now you're not only just doing the potty training consulting, but you have the podcast.
I
So
have
how has
a
that been
podcast.
going?
So fun. That was the first thing I wanted to do. Like I wanted to start a blog, I wanted to start a podcast, but then like the potty training thing actually kind of came up and I wasn't expecting it. It was more like I'm doing my blog, my burnt pancakes blog on social media, and then people started asking me for potty training advice, and
Hmm.
I was like, oh, that's funny. I haven't talked to that person in like 2 years, like out of the
Yeah.
blue, and then like another random person, and I was like no joke, in about a week, I had 4 people just kind of, hey, Katie, I know you potty trained your boys. What'd you do? And I was just about to potty train my third, and so I
Hmm.
thought, oh God, like moms need help with this. Maybe I could be their help. Um, so that's kind of like, how they talk about the how, like, don't worry about the how.
Hmm.
That was like another, like, oh, this could be a source of income that I didn't even think about 2 years ago. Like, I just thought, like, somehow
I
my
love
blog is
that.
going to take off. Somehow I'll start a podcast and something will happen from that. But this was like, oh, like, here's another breadcrumb. Follow that one.
Yeah.
Um, so
You
that's
you made that decision, and the
mhm,
universe like presented you with, "Hey, here's a way to do it.
right.
Here's one stream of income,
Right, right.
and
And I
you're
still
really
feel
good
like
at
there's a whole
it."
lot in the future that I don't know yet, but when you
Oh,
look
yeah.
back, like I look back over the last 2 years, I go, "Oh, that's why that thing was supposed to happen, and that's why that thing was supposed to happen, and I am on the right path, even though I don't really know, like,
Mhm.
exactly what the end result is. I'm
I feel
envisioning
like
it."
those are the best things, though. It's the things that we never really planned. It wasn't in our whole,
Mhm.
visualization, but
Right,
they just happen, and
right.
it's like
Well, I
it's
kept
so
writing
amazing.
down, I want to make my own schedule. I want, I'm trying to think of during that time what I was going to write. I want to be a stay at home mom, make my own schedule, like have my own income that I'm proud of. I think something else. But then when I looked back, I was like, I'm totally making my own schedule because I've got my Calendly out and I'm like, oh, the boys have a baseball game that day. I'm not going to have any business meetings then. Oh, I'm going to do this. And here's when I can do my podcast. And I'm like, I totally make my own schedule now. I can decide
Yes.
like when I want a day off and yeah.
Okay, well, so that's a question that a lot of people had. They're like, how do you schedule your business, your podcast around having kids? So do you just go off of like, okay, this is their activities, and so this is what I have open, or do you have like set times every
Pretty
week,
much.
or
I
how
know
do you
some
do
people
it?
do like I only record podcasts on Tuesdays or something.
Hmm.
This year I had two of mine in full day elementary school, and then my youngest was in preschool 3 days a week for 3 hours. So,
Hmm.
like in theory, I had 9 hours a week to record when no one was home. And so that's when I like scheduled things. And then with my potty training consultations, I try and make it a little bit more available for parents because I know
Yeah.
like usually I get parents who are like, we're on day 3, like SOS, we need help. So I like to have like, okay, I can get you in like tomorrow morning.
Right.
So I keep that open a little bit more. But yeah, I try and do it around when the kids are in school. My youngest is starting TK in August, and like the world is going to open up to me. I don't even know what it's going to feel like to have basically from 8:30 to 2:30. My
I
kids
am
are in
dreaming
school.
about
I don't
that.
even know. Like
I
it's
have
my
I have
oldest
a
is
ways to
10. So I
go.
have had kids home for 10 years.
Oh,
Like I've never not had them all other than like the 3 hours of preschool, never had them all gone
well, I
unless
feel
I
like
get
you've
my
set
mom
up
to
the
help.
foundation, right? And
Mm,
like now when you have the whole day, like it's things are just going to explode.
yes. Yes. That's
It's
I've
going to
I've
be
gotten a few messages from people about like, oh, in the fall, I think I see things like picking up. And I'm like, I feel that too. Like I'm trying
Yeah.
to like enjoy this summer, like not put too much pressure on myself to like get stuff done. Cause I do every week. I'm like, okay, I've got to get my email out. I've got to like make sure this is uploaded. I've got to write my show notes or I use AI for show notes. That helps out a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But just like this summer, it's just going to like take it easy. I have to like give myself a little bit of a break. And it's also
Hmm.
the busiest time for potty training. So I'm like, I want to make sure that's like the priority this summer. But come fall, it's like me again.
Yeah. Why is it the busiest time over the summer? Is it just
I
because
I
kids are
think a lot of
home and
yeah, I think a lot of kids are off. A lot of people are getting ready for preschool and daycare in the fall.
oh, right.
And they were like,
Okay.
we can't start unless our kids potty trained, so we need to
Mm.
make it happen. Or, you know, they are starting kindergarten and they might not be potty trained yet. So
Yeah,
it's
true.
and
So
it's
it's like,
warmer, I guess. Like a lot of times in the winter, they're like, well, we'd rather not have our kid like half naked in the winter.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That could be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so with the podcasting, I feel like the other thing that has sort of been this strong foundation that you set up that I could see definitely being beneficial down the road is networking because you do a lot of interviews. So like you have probably made so many connections
Yes.
with all types of people that maybe there will be some collaboration opportunities in the future
Oh
too.
gosh, I'd love that. Because people ask me all the time, like, well, what do you envision out of the podcast? Like, how are you going to make money off of it? And sometimes you just have to go like, I don't have that answer yet, but I know like something is coming from this. Like there is a
Yeah.
reason I'm doing it. So like I
Yep.
started off the podcast thinking that it was going to be my best friend and I like having mom chats. And it
Uh-huh.
just because of our busy schedules, like her
Right.
kid was sick one day and then I was like, wait, they're not in preschool that day. It was just like this isn't going to work. Like I just
Mhm.
need to be the host and either I'll
Yeah.
just have solo podcasts or which I'm so impressed by yours. I've done a few solo ones and I'm like, this is so hard to just talk to
Really?
myself for 30 minutes.
See, and
Um,
I feel like the solo are so easy and like the interviews sometimes are harder just because of the scheduling, I
scheduling
guess.
wise.
But
That's why
yeah.
I think this summer I'm just going to do just solo podcasts so that
Mhm.
it's like I don't have to worry about booking it around, you know, the kids' schedule. I can just be like, okay, they're in bed, I
Right.
can record.
Right.
But then it just kind of started to come into place that like, oh, that would be a fun person to talk to about motherhood, and that would be a fun person. Um, and then for anyone who's thinking about starting a podcast, there are so many resources out there. I joined like podcast network where they like here are people that want to be on podcasts and here are podcasts that want people. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was able to find all these people that I didn't know that were like
Yeah.
great fits for the podcast. So I feel like once you start one, like all these resources start opening up. Like I found out, oh, there's a program where you can just like upload your audio and your transcripts made. Like, whoa, this
Right.
this is amazing.
And that's, I feel like the technology is getting so good so
So good.
fast
Yeah.
with AI. It's like pretty soon we're just going to click a button and it's like
Your
everything's
episode is
edited,
done.
uploaded. Like we're done. We're done. All we had to do was talk into a
Right.
microphone.
Because like you started yours how many years ago? Was it?
It was in 2020.
Oh
So
my
4 years ago.
gosh.
Yeah.
Whoa. And I bet just in that time so much has changed.
Oh, totally. I mean, completely different. Um,
Right.
and that's the thing though with podcasting is I feel like it is a long game type of thing. And so fun
I've
little
heard that
fact,
from a lot of people.
yeah, like they say that I think it's 90% of people that start a podcast quit within the first year because I think a lot of people go
Oh,
into it and are like, "Oh, I'm just going to start this podcast and like everything's going to work out." Well, I feel like it's really slow in the beginning. And then what I noticed with mine is like once you hit 100,000 downloads, it took me years to get to 100,000
that is
downloads.
so good to know
And
because I'm
then
like, I'm nowhere near that.
yes, no, it took me years. And I mean, I was like, I'm never going to get there, never going to get there. And then I finally got there and then it took months to get to
Mm,
200,000. So it's like, it is a compound thing where it just keeps multiplying and the momentum builds.
right.
And so now I'm finally at the point where um there's like people that are, you know, keynote speakers and that are like best-selling authors that reach out. They're like, "Hey, do you have a spot on your podcast? I want to be a guest." So I feel like it'll seem like nothing's happening for the longest
Mhm.
time, but then it turns into this really sustainable like long-term
Yes.
business. And I'm at that point now where I'm like, I enjoy doing this more than anything else. And if I could just do podcasting full time, I would.
So
And I
fun.
feel like I'm getting there, where it's
Yeah.
like I'm seeing like, okay, maybe this actually could be the main thing, the only thing that I really have to do each week. So we'll see.
Oh,
But
that's awesome. Well, like no one on the outside sees that part of like solo entrepreneurs. They don't
yeah,
see that everything's not rosy and great. Like, oh, yay, I started my consultations and people are booking. It's like
right.
so up and down. Like I was telling you earlier, a couple weeks ago, I got a tax bill in the mail. Like we did our
Mhm.
taxes, everything great. And then just this random bill came that I was like, what is this? And it was a good chunk of money for someone who's like just starting out my business, like trying to reach that little bit. And then it was like $800. Like, I owe this for what? Trying to
Right.
pay it online. It was super confusing. I had to say what kind of taxes I filed. I'm like, oh my God. Like, could I just go back to teaching where it's like, here's your paycheck every month. Here's your W
Right.
2. You're done. And I looked at my husband. I was like, why did I start this business? This is so confusing. I ended up figuring out because, everything's figure outable. You can
Yep.
figure everything out. And then the next week, I booked, I think, 3 or 4 clients, like boom, 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 right in a row. And I was getting text messages from them like, you're a lifesaver. Oh my God, I can't believe my kid pooped in the potty for the first time. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, like there are ups and downs in business, but like the highs totally make up for it.
And I feel like they're always followed after the lowest of lows.
Hmm.
That
Yep.
is something that is a pattern that now I see it, so I know. But the lowest points in my business where maybe I have a month where I didn't do well
Not what I thought would
or
happen.
a nasty comment came in or whatever it is where you're just like so caught up in it, like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Because
Hmm.
let's be honest, we
You
all
still,
have those
okay.
thoughts.
I'm so glad
Still
to
to
hear
this
that you
day.
still feel that way. Cause I'm like,
Still
she's
to
so
this day.
successful. She's doing so great. Like, I'm sure she never doubts this.
Yeah, so funny enough, because I know like you follow the moon stuff like I do. I just recently, like maybe a year ago, finally figured out don't make any decisions on the full moon because every single full moon, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to walk away from it. Like, this sucks. I hate it. I hate everyone, blah, blah, blah. And I just get, and then like the next day, I'm like, what was that? Like,
Right? They get so dramatic about that.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, I am not allowed to even like look at my computer during a full moon now.
Yeah.
Um, but that's the other thing. Whenever there's like something that just seems so negative that happens, it's like you get through it, and on the other side of it is something so incredible. So like I had
Right.
just a weird thing with a bank account, like a business bank account this week. And it was like a technological fluke. Like it was just it's not even Mercury retrograde. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but it was so frustrating and so aggravating. I was getting so upset over it. And then when I got it done, I just felt this like weight lifted off my shoulders. And it's like, as we're recording, it's the week of the new moon, and you're like, with this new moon, you're supposed to kind of clean the slate and like start fresh. And
Mm,
I'm like, I really think I was supposed to see that at this time because I never dealt with it before, and I needed to wipe the slate clean and clean up the back end of certain things so I
yeah.
can start fresh. So I did that, and then like literally, not even kidding, the next day, the most incredible opportunity opened up.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm not going to talk about it yet, but it's like I was just like, my jaw just dropped open. Like, this happens every
Yep.
time. Every time I'm in that
Yep.
really low place and I push through and I hold on, I'm like, I'm not going to give up hope. The most
Hmm.
incredible thing is on the other side. And it happens over and over and over again. Unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, it is like
It
a,
is.
roller coaster.
Right. And even like the most successful multi-million dollar a month people probably feel that as well.
They do because like as I, was kind of navigating this one thing, I was listening to another podcast that I've followed for years, and this is a multi-million dollar company, very, very, very successful, millions of followers on social media. They were going through the same thing. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, how
Like
divine
we're the
intervention
same.
there. Like, I saw that and I was like, oh, okay. Like, maybe it's, it just kind of put everything in a perspective. Like,
Mhm.
you're doing fine. Everything is fine.
Right.
And things are just going to keep getting better and better. And when something does happen, maybe it's happening because you have to clear that out. You have to just
Right.
wipe the slate clean and move forward from whatever that was.
I
So,
need to just start going like, oh, things are really rough right now. I cannot wait to see what's on the other side of this.
yes.
Start anticipating something really good.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and you hear like these motivational speakers, and I swear every one of them hit like a really low point. And I always think about this because I'm like, had they not hit a rough patch, would they ever have had the motivation
Right.
to get to where they're at now? Like probably not. So I always try to look at those negative things, but I think it's important that everyone knows like that's being an entrepreneur. Like you're
Mhm.
not going to get your steady paycheck, which means you're going to have some months where you're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm rich. I feel like everything's happening in my favor." And then you're going to
Mhm.
have months where you feel like throwing in the towel, and then you're going to have everything in between. And so not everyone can do that. For me, it's exciting. I like having something different every day and like knowing that the sky's the limit.
Mhm.
You're gonna face some obstacles,
Yeah.
but
That was
again,
an adjustment for me because I'm a
yeah,
very like planner and I'm
yep.
like, I save my money and I'm not irresponsible. And so
Mhm.
going like, I'm giving up my teaching paycheck, which like people say teachers don't make a lot of money. I made a decent income with my husband's income. We were like, we're good. So to go from that to zero was like, oh my gosh, this feels kind of irresponsible. Like
Mhm.
it was an adjustment to say, like, I'm just going to trust this process. But I looked at how much I was so ready to leave teaching,
Yeah,
and that outweighed the paycheck. I've had multiple times my school reach out to me and say, "Would you want to come back and sub?" And each time I'm like, "Oh, I could use that money." And then I'm like, "No, like I need time for this. Like if I go back, I'll hate it. I don't want to go back."
that was the thing that helped me quit my job because I was going for a walk one day and I was listening to a podcast and she was like, worst case scenario, let's just say you go for your dreams and they don't work out. Worst case scenario.
Mhm.
You can always go and find another job that makes you miserable. And that was a wake up call for me. And
Yeah.
then she went on to say, she's like, most people don't realize that they are living out their worst case scenario right now. And I was like,
Oh,
I am living my worst case scenario. I mean,
yeah.
I was having panic attacks for crying out
Mhm.
loud about my job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could easily find another job that makes me have panic
And
attacks. Like,
would I
why am
wanna
I
sit in this for 30 more years?
right? And so now that I'm out of it, I can't even fathom ever going back. I don't know
No.
if you feel the same way, but
Totally.
it's
I
just
helped in
like,
my son's kindergarten class, and I'm like, "I love that I can help," and I
yeah,
love that the teacher seems like she just loves her job, but I was like, I was not there anymore. I was at the point where, like, I think it was, like, some divine intervention too. Like, I got to the point where I was like, "I don't even feel like I belong here. Like, I see myself out of this." I think it was like, "It's time for something else for you." Like, the
yeah.
universe is like, You've done this. This was good for when you didn't have kids and when they were little, but it's time I outgrew it. It just didn't fit anymore.
I love how you say divine intervention or whatever that was that you said. Cause like I think we get those hints and those nudges, but no one like really teaches us how to tune into that. We're
Yeah.
used to like just putting that off and
Mhm.
ignoring it, but I really think that that is the universe, God, telling us, hey, there's something else you're meant to do. And
Yeah.
if you keep ignoring it, then the signs just get stronger and stronger. And I mean, that's probably why I was having panic attacks. It's like,
Yes.
hello, like,
Get
wake
out.
up, pay
Yes.
attention.
Because, like, it just felt like I cannot be here any longer, but then society and, like, the
Yeah.
older generation going, "But you have a, 401k or, you've been doing
Right.
this for this amount of years. If you don't put in 20 more years, you won't get Social Security," all of that stuff, and you just felt like you feel like you need to stick with a job that you've had since you were 22 until you're 65. But I'm like, I cannot do that for another like 25, 30 years. Could not
No.
imagine. Or someone said, okay, let's see. It was a woman who worked in like a nursing home and
Mhm.
a lot of people at the end of their life. And she like interviewed a bunch of them and said, like, what is your biggest regret? Or like, what advice do you have for people who are younger? And they all said, like, don't live with regrets. Don't just stick with what is comfortable. Like they all said, I regretted not doing this or I regretted this. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be older and look back and say, oh, I did that for 35 years and I hated it. Like
Right.
I'm hoping I look back at my, let's see, I think I was 40 or 41 when I quit my job. And I hope I look back and I go, I am so proud of that Katie that took the
Yes.
leap and did it. Not like, why did she leave teaching? Like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna be fine. Like we're gonna figure things out. But I hope I'm like so proud of myself for doing that.
Well, and it's so true because it's like you never hear people talking about how they regret like the things that they went for. Like, oh, I so regret following my heart and following my
Yeah.
dreams. They always
Yeah.
regret the things that they didn't do because they'll
Yeah.
never know. And I mean, I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise, but I grew up with, my dad always, still to this day, always saying, if only I would have done that. If only I would have, and I mean with
Mhm.
everything. And it's so like I hear it all the time. And I just since I was a kid remember thinking, I don't want to be like that. Like I'm just gonna do the thing. And then
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about it when when 10
Yes.
years or 20 years or 30 years. So,
Yep.
and it's showing your kids too. Like I think it's a really cool thing that your kids are probably too small right now to notice, but I'm starting to see it with my oldest who's a teenager is I really do think it's setting this example where it's showing them like, wow, I can follow my dreams and I could do something that, everyone tells me I can't do and be successful. Like it's just, it
Right.
shows them
Such a great
something that they're
example.
not going to see in school. They're not going to learn that in
Mhm.
school, in a 9 to 5 job, in our society. But to see their mom doing that and
Yeah.
doing what makes you happy and not being
Yes.
stressed all the time, I think that's really a
Right.
cool example to set for them.
Well, my son had to do this like little speech in class. They just had to like welcome the class every morning. Like, good morning, everyone. Today is da 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 da, and like lead them in the pledge. And when it
Mhm.
was his day to do it, he's like, Mom, I'm so nervous. I don't want to go to school today. And I told him, I was like, when I was your age, speaking in front of the class was so scary. But looking back at that little girl, if I had said, hey, you're going to start a podcast one day and you're just going to speak into a microphone and put it out there for everyone to hear, I would have been like, no way, that's not me. But I did it. So I was like, I am doing something that scared me. Like I was very scared to start the podcast. I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like, am I going to be terrible at this? I'm like, you can do that too. Like you can do hard things. So
That's so powerful.
yeah,
I love that. Oh my
because I was
gosh.
still like, I cannot believe I started a podcast. Like, I can't believe I
Me
did it.
too. I know. I know when my mom's so funny. She tells me that all the time. She's like, never in a million years. Like when you were a kid,
Yep.
I never in a million years would think that you'd be
My
podcasting
mom
because
says
I
that
was
too.
so shy. I was
Me
so
too.
like afraid of like talking. And she's like, I just can't believe you talk for a living. And I'm like, I can't either. Like,
I know.
I
Me
don't
too.
know. I don't put me on a
In
stage,
college, I
but
had to take oral communication, I think, where you have to like give speeches in class. Like everyone had to
yeah.
take that class to graduate. And I was like terrified. Now I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm giving speeches in a microphone every day. Like how was that
Yeah,
the same person?
I
But
know.
okay, what helped was your confidence subliminals that I listened to on repeat for like 2 years before I actually launched the podcast. Like I just needed to get through that fear.
Yeah, those, oh my gosh, those work. They
So
work.
great.
It's
Yep.
crazy how
Yeah.
much they work. But yeah, like, and I love it now too. Like I don't know, it's just weird. I never get like
Mhm.
nervous talking on a podcast, but I think if I was like on stage and I was seeing everybody looking at
Yes.
me, I'd probably not
Yes.
like that very
Yes.
much. But I
Well,
can
I
talk
get
to
off
myself in a
I
microphone.
get off interviews some days and like my husband works from home a lot. So he'll be like, "Oh, how'd the interview go?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I felt like I was talking to like my best friend." And he's like, "Oh, that's great." I'm like, "No, that's what I wanted to do." Like I went
Yeah,
into this saying, "I want to help moms and I want to chat with them and I want to feel like I'm making friends." And there we go. There's the
there you
podcast.
go. Yeah,
2
it
years
truly
later.
is
Yep.
like the best job ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, any last words of advice for moms out there? Maybe someone who is like thinking about it, thinking about starting podcasts, starting a business, leaving her job. Like, what would you tell her?
I think it's totally fine to like dabble in your interests. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a website and just put up blog posts and see what works. Like, did all of them take off and do well? No. I'm going to explore Pinterest, see if that helps. I started an Etsy shop. I had one thing do really well, some things not at all, but I was just looking to see like what's going to work and what feels right to do. Um, so I did all of that before quitting my job. And then the other thing is juggle. You just have to juggle and be okay with the fact that your kids do watch TV sometimes when you're trying to get work done. And like it was very hard for me this year feeling like there's so much more I could be doing, but I just am not ready to take away from my kids' time right now. Um,
Yeah.
so like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you should do this software. You should do that. You should record that. You should do that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I should." But I'm trying to still balance right now. Whereas I feel like in the fall, I'm like, then I feel comfortable saying, yes, I can do all that. But it's okay to just juggle and fit in what you need to at first.
I think that's really, really important what you just said, because we always think we have to do more. Like we're
Mhm.
always going to think that because
Yep.
that's the way we were conditioned. But being so into manifestation, like it's never about doing, it's about being. And so this time, and especially this summer when you're home with your kids, you're never going to get that time back. You're making
Yeah.
memories, you're
Yeah.
filling up your own cup, and energetically, you're doing a
Breaking up
lot.
fights.
Breaking up fights. I mean, but like it's energetically really preparing you
Right.
to take that action.
Yeah.
And you'll know when that time is to take the action because you'll feel so inspired to do it.
Right. And I
So
keep trying to
it's,
tell myself, like, okay, I'm 2 or 3 years, I can't even remember anymore. 3 years into like officially starting my website. And it's okay that it's taking this long. It's
yeah,
okay that it's not like this $1 million business right now. Cause I mean, I would love to be at that point and it
yeah,
can get there. But right now, like priorities mean it's just taking a little bit longer than, I'm not blowing up on social media like other people are, but that's okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it again, like it is slow in the beginning for most people, but the people that stick with it find success. And that's what I've noticed. Cause like I said, 90% of podcasters quit within the first year. Those that stick around, because I've followed so many for so long, find success. That is it. Like that is the key. It's
Yeah.
consistency. It's
Yeah.
not giving up when it looks like things aren't working,
Right.
but showing up anyways. Like that's faith, that's belief. And if you stick with it, you will find success. Like
Yeah.
those that stick around are the ones that are getting like the podcast deals and the brand deals and everything else. And so it's like, it's not a mystery. It's just, do you have the wherewithal
Right.
to hang on? And you do.
'Cause
Like you've
do you
got
feel
it.
that? Like, there are moments when I'm like, "I should just quit this. I should just quit and do something else." But then, like, my inner voice is like, "Snap out of it, Katie. Like, you are not gonna quit. Like, you don't wanna do that." And I'm like, "You're right. I don't wanna quit."
Yeah.
But
And
you
I
have
find,
moments when you're like, "Ugh, I just wanna quit."
yep. Oh, yeah. Like I said, I mean, I literally had that moment this week. I'm not even kidding. I mean, there was just this like nasty review, and which I don't really get that often, but it really
It's
bothered me.
hard.
It
Yeah.
like it really just I felt like I was stabbed in the heart. Like I was so dramatic about it.
And
But it
doing this kind of
hurt
business, you have to put yourself
because
out there and, like,
yes, you
know
pour
that that
your
could come.
soul into
Yes.
something, and it's
Yeah.
really, really hard when someone says something negative. But again, it's like I just kind of reconfirmed my commitment to it. And like I said, the most incredible thing happened the very next day. So it's like things, good things come to those that wait. Is that
Mhm.
the
Oh,
saying
I
or
love that.
whatever?
Yes, because my
Yeah.
podcast is like just over a year old. And I'm like, okay, like this is the point. I like keep going, right? I keep going.
Yeah.
Like every Friday, you got to put something out. And like this week was like Thursday night, let's get that ready to go out. But it got out. Like I had to set goals for myself. Like I'm not in teach anymore where they tell me, okay, this is what you have to have done by this time. It's like, Katie, you said you were going to do a podcast every Friday. You're not going to skip. And that has
Yeah.
been like setting my own personal goals.
Right, right. Oh, and the other thing I should say with podcasting and like building up that momentum is, I'm finally at that point now where it's like I went from, you know, income for the podcast to like multiple sources, like ads,
Right.
brand
I have heard
deals,
ads on yours.
sponsorship. Yes.
Yes.
So when you finally get to that point, what they do or what they can do with the company that I'm working with is they'll go back and put those ads on all your previous
Mm.
episodes. So I just think to myself, thank God I stuck with
Stuck
it
with it.
because I have whatever 280, 90 episodes now that I can earn an income on. And had I given up or had I not like stuck with
Mm.
it and recorded every week, I wouldn't have all those to
Oh
go
my gosh,
back on.
that's so good to know. Because I
Yeah.
also put mine on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel
Hmm.
and it's extra work, like having
Yeah.
to do the video version. And then you can't just like mash show notes. You have to like do separate show notes for that one. And I'm like, am I really still doing it on YouTube? But I have some older videos that I did before even starting the podcast that
Hmm.
those are still generating like tons of views. And I'm like, okay, maybe I started that for a reason just to like have every avenue open,
Right.
just
And if
keep it
one of
all
those videos like goes viral,
right.
you
The
could
right
make money
person
off of
sees
that,
it.
right?
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, it's like, and you never know. You never know when that point's going to be. That's the tricky part. Like, and
Yeah.
that's part of the fun though,
Having
too,
faith,
is like
having faith.
someone could see it tomorrow that is going to go write a news article about it. Like, you never
Mhm.
know. But
Right.
when that point comes, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh, that's why I had to do
Stuck with it.
all those episodes
Right.
because I needed all of that to get to this. And then you finally like realize, everything that you've
Right.
worked so hard for. So don't give up.
Like, and I see other people having that success. So instead, like, it's natural to feel like, gosh, why isn't that happening to me? But instead, I'm like, oh, she went after her goal and I can be there too, but at my
Yeah.
own timeline. It doesn't have
Whenever
to
I see
happen the
that,
same
I'm
way.
like, oh, that's the universe showing me that
It's
I
doable.
am on that wavelength and
Yep.
I'm on, that is going to happen for me. And that's the reason I'm seeing it because yeah, it's so easy to be like envious or to be like, oh
Why
man, I
her?
suck.
Like,
Like
how
they're
did
so good.
she do that? Yes.
Right. And it's like, I just feel like it's the universe like saying like, hey, I'm showing you this to show you what's coming. So like hang in there. That's how
Yes.
I have to look at it now. So,
Yes. Yeah.
oh
But
my
also
God.
like find people to be in your corner.
Yes.
It's so hard doing this all by yourself and not even having people to bounce ideas off of. So
Mhm.
having our mastermind that we did, like
Yeah.
that was huge to know like, okay, I can like talk to other people or get ideas from other people or
Yeah.
just have
It's so
cheerleaders.
important because it's so lonely.
It's
I
so
mean, it
lonely.
really is.
Yeah.
And you
And
could
like I
talk
don't
to,
share everything with like my close friends, it's like,
right.
I need people who are going to get like I cried the other day when I got a tax bill.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
other women that like get it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you go and you try to talk to your friends, your family about like something with podcasting, they're going to be like, huh? Like you have to have like your people that are in it too sometimes.
Yeah.
And oh, that's so important as entrepreneurs because I think a lot of the people that do give up probably didn't have that. They probably didn't have a support system. Because if you tried giving up, I would be like, nope, no, not happening. Nope.
Yeah.
All right, let's
It's like
figure out what's
keep
going on
going,
and
keep
fix it.
going.
Oh,
Oh,
Katie, I could talk to you all day,
I know. This
but
is
I get
so
to talk
fun.
to you again tomorrow because we're gonna
Yes.
have our little
Yes.
happy hour meetup.
Meet up.
So,
Yay.
yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and tell everyone where they can find you and all the
Oh,
places.
yeah. Okay. So you can listen to my podcast. It's Burnt Pancakes with Katie, or sorry, the Burnt Pancakes podcast. My social media is Burnt Pancakes with Katie. If you're interested in potty training, you can go to my website, Burnt Pancakes, or my other social media account, it's Potty Time. So juggling all of that.
I don't know how you do all that, but you're good
I
at
don't
it.
either.
And
I don't
I
either.
could say from experience, the potty training works, and you talk about things that no one else does. So, if anyone out there needs potty training advice, like legit, Katie
Hit me
is
up.
the person to go to.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Oh,
thank you so
thank
much
you.
for coming on, and we'll have you on again in the future because I
Oh,
mean, I love you. So, all
oh.
right, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.